I read a lot. And I mean a lot. It's my job, after all. Welcome once again to Musings by Danon. Normally on this channel, we talk about anime and manga, maybe some light novels, but that's not all we talk about. Sometimes we talk about fantasy or comic books or superhero movies. Today is a bit of a mixed bag. I want to talk about the books I read last month, including the ones I started in July but haven't quite finished yet. And I don't just mean traditional Western-style novels, I mean new manga that I discovered as well. No, we won't be going over the hundreds of individual chapters I read, just the series that were new to me. Also, real quick, if you like this sort of content, leave a comment down below and hit that like and subscribe button. I am trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Let's start out with the physical books I read, and we'll get the big one out of the way. That's right, I finally started reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. I know I'm late to the party, but honestly, this is how it is for me generally. If I'm going to be investing in a fantasy series that's going to cost me a couple of $100s to put on my shelf, as well as the precious little shelf space I have left, I am very choosy about what I put on my wall. But enough diverse people have said that this series is great, so I decided to give it a shot. And I already ordered book 2 before I finished the first book. For those who don't know, Dungeon Crawler Carl is a post-apocalyptic lit RPG book about a guy who survived the destruction of Earth only to be forced to play a death game for the entertainment of trillions of viewers from across the galaxy. Every season, a world is chosen and they televise the survivors in some sort of death game, most often a dungeon. The dungeon is built using pieces of the destroyed worlds, so the survivors, called crawlers, will feel some familiarity. Meth-addicted llamas, bomb-throwing goblins, screaming fans, and a psychotic AI running the dungeon that just loves Carl's bare feet. Like, a lot. Keep those piggies sparkling clean for me, Carl. The best part about this series is how quickly Matt Dinniman comes out with new novels. He's been pretty consistently coming out with new books about every 6 months or so. Looking at you, George R.R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss. So, I'm going to take my time with these, and hopefully I can spread them out between the other books so that I can finish when book 10 comes out. For now, I'm just avoiding spoilers. Which, I gotta say, for a series this new, the fandom sure doesn't care about spoiling absolutely everything. Do better, DCC fandom. My son got this for me for Father's Day, and I finally had the chance to read it this month. I fell in love with this series a long time ago, and got him into it as well, what with him being a big D&D nerd like his father. I don't want to spoil what happens all the way in Book 9, but I will let you know about Book 1. Basically, this series is a light and happy dark fantasy. No, I'm not joking, and yes, it does work. Let me explain. Lauren is a legendary mercenary who doesn't realize he's a legend. One day, he's the only survivor of his mercenary company. A man's gotta eat, so he decides to become an adventurer. All he has is his sword, a massive two-hander that is basically a dragon slayer, some well-worn but well-maintained leather armor, and a few coppers to his name. He joins an adventuring guild and is soon recruited into a party. 3 childhood friends in search of adventure, a priestess of the god of knowledge, and himself. The quest this fledgling party has accepted is to clear out a goblin nest. Simple, right? Lauren is so happy to be partnered up with experienced adventurers and hopes that everything goes well. Until the first night, that is. Lapis, our priest, joins Lauren on the first watch of the night, and the two distract themselves from the sounds of love-making coming from the tent with the 3 childhood friends. Both Lauren and Lapis are disgusted. Not by the sex, but by the fact that they were shamelessly doing this out in the wilderness with new party members in earshot. Some people's kids, am I right? Anyway, the 3 kids soon prove themselves useless in combat when all 3 of them are quickly wiped out. A goblin shaman casts an anti-magic field. This doesn't affect Lauren because he's just a human. Well, he's a very strong human, but he still doesn't use magic. Lapis, on the other hand, collapses to the ground, completely stunned. What kind of person gets completely stunned when hit with an anti-magic spell? So Lauren picks her up and runs and finds himself in an ancient ruin with strange markings. This could be an ancient city of some kind, and the powers of the ancients are still not completely understood. They encounter another party and the newly formed alliance is in for the fight of its life. So that was basically book 1 in a nutshell. There are 15 of them out, but I've only read up to book 9. If you like high adventure with a bit of comedy to break up the savage nature of this series, seriously, most people die in the encounters that Lauren and Lapis barely survive, you will enjoy this series. Also, I mentioned how it is similar to D&D. Specifically, the series reads like an awesome adventure. You've got the hook, the characters go to investigate, bad stuff happens, and they barely escape with their lives. And the reason Lauren is referred to as a broke mercenary is because he always ends up further and further in debt, no matter how much fortune he accrues during the course of his adventure. Seriously great series. I'll post a link down below for you to read it. That's it for physical media. Let's talk about the digital media I read this month. Let me state clearly that I didn't think this book deserved its own video, and the only reason I'm including it is because I decided to do a video talking about everything I read. The main character, Walker, figures out that he's been isekai'd into a dark fantasy world when the party he's with is teleported to a hidden boss chamber. There, they encounter a Grim Reaper. Now, he's had his memories of Earth his entire life, but he always figured this was a fantasy world, not a specific fantasy world. Walker remembers this scene because, in his previous life, he read a manga. Chapter 1 showed a party with one guy and 3 girls getting caught in a teleport trap. The Grim Reaper killed the guy, and the girls were all forcibly taken by the monsters. Sorry, I'd use a different word, but I'm trying not to get demonetized. And then the hero shows up and one-shots the monster. The whole scene, bridging an entire party, was meant to show how powerful the hero was. He was also bitter about how unfair and dark the world is, and just goes around slaughtering monsters. Walker decides that history won't play out the same way. He throws everything he has into one last strike, and winds up defeating the monster. 2 weeks later, he wakes up in bed missing an eye and his right leg below the knee. But all of his companions, his precious friends, are alive. I mean, being permanently crippled but still alive after a monster that could have easily wiped out your party? That's a pretty good feat, right? Except the girls don't see it that way. All of them are devastated. How could Walker, a man I've admired, who helped me, who maybe I've developed feelings for, maybe not, I'm not sure, get injured protecting me? I should have been the one to die. I understand these girls' feelings, but here's the issue. That same story is repeated 4 times, 3 from his companions and once more from a high-ranking priestess in the church. And that's the rest of the book. The author stated that they wanted to explore the aftermath of a horrendous injury and the effects it had on the party. And they certainly did that. The problem I have is the girls are all stuck on the 4th stage of grief. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. All of the girls seem to jump from denial to depression and just get stuck there. I think I would have enjoyed the book more if the girls were in different stages of grief, or had taken slightly different paths, but it felt like reading the exact same story from a slightly different perspective, and that's why I can't really recommend this series. I plan to read the next book, assuming one ever gets published, but for now, let's just move on to other things. After I finished Our Party Nearly Wiped, I wanted a palate cleanser, so I'm currently reading the next volume of one of my favorite isekai series, Now I'm a Demon Lord, Happily Ever After with Monster Girls in My Dungeon. Only about 20 pages into this one, and it has one of my favorite scenes from the series. No, I'm not going to spoil it, but by this point in the series, your reaction will be, finally. For those who have read the manga or the light novels, this is the one where the Dragon King shows up. That's all I'm going to say, so don't spoil it for the non-readers. I've already done a video on this one, and I really enjoyed what I've read so far. I love how the main character doesn't understand social dynamics, and just because a guy is loud and always talking to girls, doesn't mean he's popular. In my experience, girls feel more at ease around a guy who isn't a threat to them. Basically, the premise for this manga is main boy is good with his hands. He likes to make things, mostly out of wood, but fellow crafters will know that a lot of those skills are transferable. He helps Sakai, the class Gyaru, repair her bike. It wasn't much, just an uncoupled chain, but if you don't know the trick, reattaching the chain can seem an insurmountable obstacle. Seika starts to believe that this may be the boy she fell in love with when she was little. You see, Sekia used to live in this area but moved away long ago. But before she moved, when she was a little girl who spent a lot of time at the hospital, a boy once gave her a gift. "I'll make anything for you." And Sekia was obsessed with the magical girl anime, so he made her a figure. A figure she still has today. And now that she's moved back home, she found the boy that gave her hope, and nothing will stop her from staying by his side. As I said earlier, I like this one enough to do a video on it, so if you find this manga on some fan sites, you should give it a read. I started reading this one because I'm a fan of another work by this same author. My female friends are surprisingly willing to let me do it if I ask for it, which is a harem rom-com with a bunch of friends with benefits. I'd talk more about it, but this is YouTube and we need to keep it family friendly. Anyway, this other series, When I Confessed to the Girl I Liked, Her Twin Sister Came Along as a Bonus, is exactly what it sounds like. It is an ecchi harem where two sisters fall in love with the same guy, and when he confesses to one, she not only says yes, she tells him that he has to start dating her sister as well. This one definitely falls into the category of the author's barely disguised fetish. I'm sure if you think about it, more will come to mind. A cute read, but not deserving of its own video. This one is similar to the previous one, but it's an isekai. Main character pretends to have no magic power, so he can try and live a quiet life. But all that goes out the window when he saves the Marquis's daughter. She convinces her father to bring the boy to the family estate in order to teach her and her sister magic. Come to find out, the Marquis married into the family, and his wife is a bit of a badass. So she challenges the boy to a fight to see how strong he is. She wins, but she has to go all out. I like seeing stuff like this. Sure, the boy is powerful, but experience matters, and she has a lot more experience than he does. After she knocks the boy out, she tells her daughters that both of them will marry the boy. She tells her husband to shut up. The boy's bloodline will be powerful, and she wants his descendants to help the kingdom, so she figures the best way to do so is to have him marry both of her daughters. I know that sounds a bit mercenary, but this is a medieval world with magic, so marriages were about money and power. But since it's a fantasy, power does include magical power, not just political or military power. Anyway, this is a cute series, but it has just started, so we'll have to give it time for it to really get going, before if we see it's worth a full video. I talked about this one in my video last week. We only have a few chapters out so far, but it's already rising up in my ranking of the best isekai series that don't have an anime. My favorite part about this series is how the main character, who's been reincarnated as the villain of an Otome game, is convinced that all the heroines that are now surrounding him are going to kill him. So he's creating a harem, but he's convinced that harem will be the death of him. This one is a cute short-form webcomic from the same author as Brain Rot Girlfriend. Basically, this guy works at a convenience store, and his coworker is an eldritch horror from beyond time and space. They make pithy remarks about customers via psychic communication, which may or may not be killing the main character. That's beside the point. The series is very funny, with some obvious dark undertones. It is a bleak and vicious look at how humanity treats itself, through the eyes of a being with incomprehensible powers from beyond the realms of man. That's it for digital media, but what about audiobooks? Did I get through any audiobooks in July? I'm so glad you asked, dear viewer. This is a new one for me. Usually when I decide to read a series, it's on the recommendation of friends or content creators. I hear about the series, what it's like, give it a shot. I've tried my hand at Romantasy before, but I was bored out of my skull. I got like an hour into Fourth Wing and then deleted it from my phone. Yes, I know that some of you are going to call blasphemy. I don't care. So I was a little hesitant going into a different romance series, but the author, Edie Skye, has convinced me to give it a shot anyway. And I'm glad she did. She pitched it as Steampunk Gundam with more ass, which sounded like a fun ride to me. Titan Mage tells the story of Joseph Locke, a young man who was paralyzed by a drunk driver. While wheeling his way home after getting laid off, a gorgeous woman in a purple suit comes to talk to him. She presents herself as a headhunter and vaguely explains that the role will involve travel. She hands him an employment contract, and even though Locke is desperate, he does take the time to read it through. The last page is a strange purple page covered in gold runes and symbols, and she explains that it's sort of a cover sheet. This is a lie, of course. After he signs the contract, Locke dies of a heart attack and is reborn in the world of Haven. Haven is similar to Earth, but magic exists, and that magic powers airships, tools, and especially Titans, ancient and powerful mechs. And the airship Locke finds himself on is crewed by 3 very sexy women. Yes, it is that kind of series. I said it was smut. Now, Edie Sky specifically calls this men's romance, and it is something I've touched on before on this channel, discussing the difference between shoujo and shonen series. In women's romance, the chase is what's important. The chase is the plot, or at least a major part of the plot. Conflict is at the center of any story. Without conflict, you don't have a story. Discovering feelings, testing to see if they have the same feelings, and slowly working towards being together. Romance written for women tends to have the romance itself be the conflict. Is this person worth surrendering myself to? Will they support me? But in men's romance, the romance is supporting the plot. The bond between the men and women having sex shows not only how well they work together in bed, but mirrors how well they work together in the field. They will go on adventures together and support each other, or even save each other. So if you're wanting a Western-style isekai set in a magical steampunk with lots of hot girls, give this one a shot. This is one of my favorite isekai. I've read and reread the first volume a bunch of times in multiple formats: physical, digital, manga adaptation, and audiobook. The reason I went back and listened to it again is because the anime is coming out this fall, and I wanted to refresh my memory. There are 15 books in this series after all, and I needed to remember what events happened in book 1. For those who don't know, Reborn as a Space Mercenary is an isekai where the main character wakes up inside of his beloved ship, the Krishna. Every night after work, he'd come home and hop on Stella Online, an MMO with spacefaring mechanics. You can explore, hunt space pirates, join an intergalactic empire, all sorts of options. And Captain Hero, our main character, played as a mercenary. He learned the game, often the hard way, dying and having to start over with a new ship, but eventually became wealthy and skilled enough to get the Krishna, a small ship with the firepower of a cruiser. Not a full battleship by any means, but he can take out corvettes or even destroyers if he's pressed. Anyway, he kills some pirates, arrives at a colony, meets a nice girl, then meets a different girl, one who isn't so nice. Well, that's not fair. Elma is a fellow mercenary and also a bit of a tsundere. She helps him register so he can officially become a mercenary. They find another girl being taken by some thugs. Hero saves her and she winds up on his ship as a crew member. Oh, also in this universe, if a man invites a woman onto his ship, he's also inviting her to bed. Hero doesn't know this, but he doesn't say no when Mimi, the girl he saved, comes to visit him that night. So this is an isekai where the main character does in fact have sex, but unlike Titan Mage, we just fade to black and the naughty sweaty details are left to your imagination. This is one of my favorite isekai, and probably would have been pretty high on my video from last week, but we're getting an anime adaptation in a couple of months, so if you're an anime-only person, get excited. What can be said about the late great Terry Pratchett that hasn't already been said? This man may be the greatest author of the 20th century. No, I'm not exaggerating. Hear me out. Comedy is harder than drama, both to write and to perform. Think about it. Most dramatic actors struggle to do comedy, but an inverse percentage of comedians can do drama. Personally, I believe this is because all of us have experienced tragedy. All of us know what it is to lose. But not all of us can turn that pain into something beautiful or entertaining. But Terry Pratchett could. He saw the problems of the world and exposed them. Sure, he sometimes joked about them. That made the bitter and harsh news easier to swallow. I'll give you an example, and while this scene isn't in Going Postal, it is used as an example in colleges across the world as a simple way to explain why being poor is so expensive. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take boots, for example. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while a poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. This was the Captain Samuel Vimes Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. This is from Men-at-Arms, first printed in 1993, and is part of the City Watch saga. For those who don't know Discworld, it's a flat world that exists on top of 4 giant elephants, who all stand on the back of a turtle flying through space. Sir Pratchett wrote 41 books that take place in this world, and much of the series is connected, but you don't need to read them in any particular order. He tackled subjects like socioeconomic unfairness, politics, racism, addiction, gender identity, free will, religion, business, and in the case of Going Postal, a defense of the public sector. A lot of money has been spent claiming that UPS or FedEx or whatever are better than the post office. But the post office delivers to every single address in the United States. UPS and FedEx don't. For them, it isn't cost effective to deliver to more rural areas. The Postal Service doesn't care, and that is mirrored in Going Postal. The CLAC service, which can send messages from across the disk in a matter of minutes, is being run by a corrupt and miserly bunch that care more about profits than doing a good job. Meanwhile, the post office, as a public service, doesn't care about maximizing profits. The problem is the people who work in public service are nice. Be honest with me. Who do you think is a better human being? A public school teacher or a CEO? Not richer, not more powerful, simply a better human being. That's right, the school teacher. My dad remarried long after all of his kids had moved out, and the woman he married was a saint. She spent 40 years as a special ed teacher. 40 years. But because she was such a saint, she's not the type of person to advocate for herself or to stand up to an entire corrupt system. Let me put it in superhero terms. She's Captain America. Stalwart, strong, good-hearted, and smart. But Cap would not have survived Winter Soldier without Black Widow. Natasha thinks like a villain. She's cunning, vicious, and ruthless. She will do anything necessary to get the job done. Enter Moist von Lipwig, a skilled con artist. Some might say he's legendary. He is to be hanged for his crimes, and is hung from his neck before a gathered crowd. However, the hangman did not kill him, merely made it look like he was dead. Lipwig wakes up sitting in front of Vetinari, the patrician and ruler of Ankh-Morpork. He's given a choice. He can become the new Postmaster General and try to fix the post office to compete with the CLAC system, or actually get executed. Moist decides to go with the former, only to find out that the entire floor of the post office is covered in piles of undelivered letters, coated in a layer of pigeon shit. This is a comedy about second chances, about standing up to big business, about setting things right, along with a little romance. There is autistic representation. There are jokes about natural remedies as opposed to going to the doctors. There are jokes about free will, all told by someone who is, arguably, the greatest writer of the 20th century. I said earlier that comedy is harder to write than drama, so it must go to show that the best comedy writer is the best writer of that era. I can think of no one funnier than Terry Pratchett, though Douglas Adams comes close. But in a dead race, I give it to Sir Pratchett, knighted with the star metal sword that he forged himself for the occasion. No, I'm not joking. Look it up. If this video does well, I may do more of these in the future. Sometimes I come across a series that I really enjoyed, but there isn't enough to it to make a full video. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, a huge shout out to my editor Cute Stuff. I couldn't make these videos without her. If you'd like to hire her to edit your own videos, she can be reached at cutestuff.edits@gmail.com. Link is down below. If you're looking for ways to support the channel directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/Danon. There are several tiers to choose from. You can pick an anime or manga for me to do a video about, or you can join our monthly manga club. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons: Waffles, Marcus, Brett, Roxy, Alix, Robert, Pi, Kazaris, Patrick, Boomy, Osra, Sleech, Luke, Mr. Salty, Daniel Zombie, Brian, Waka, Talathia, Azander, Michael, and John. You guys are awesome. I post anime or manga videos often, or you can click here to watch additional videos. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time on Musings by Danon.